If you were to commission a global intelligence report on the human species, what do you think would be the most complex, highly classified, and fiercely negotiated subject? It wouldn't be nuclear codes or trade secrets. It would be love, specifically the architecture of how we date, mate, and legally bind ourselves to one another.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, because marriage at its core is the ultimate human algorithm. For most of human history, it was a cold, hard economic contract. It was about land, lineage, and survival. Today, we've overlaid that ancient survival mechanism with the glittering, highly unstable expectation of romantic love. And watching how different cultures navigate that collision is absolutely fascinating.
Exactly. So today we are opening the Intimacy Dossier. We are going to map out the state of dating and marriage across the most populated countries on all 7 continents. Let's start with the heavyweight, Asia. Specifically India, which recently became the most populous nation on Earth. The traditional image is the strict arranged marriage, but the reality on the ground is shifting rapidly, isn't it?
Radically shifting, but not in the way Westerners might assume. It's not a wholesale abandonment of tradition, it's an evolution. We are seeing the rise of what you might call arranged dating. You have these massive digital matchmaking platforms that function almost like corporate headhunters. The parents might still do the initial vetting, checking, caste, education, astrological compatibility, but the final decision, the actual chemistry check, is left to the couple. They go on dates, they text, they have a veto power that previous generations simply did not possess.
It's like outsourcing the grueling initial swipe phase of dating to your parents. You get a pre vetted shortlist of candidates. There is a strange pragmatic genius to that, especially when you contrast it with the exhaustion of Western dating apps. But how does this play out in a place like Africa? Let's look at Nigeria, the continent's demographic giant. You have hypermodern megacities like Lagos colliding with deep rooted tribal traditions.
Nigeria is the perfect example of living in two timelines at once. In Lagos, you have a booming tech-savvy youth culture. Dating looks very much like it does in London or New York, Instagram sliding, dating apps, coffee dates. But when a relationship gets serious, the ancient machinery kicks in. You cannot bypass the traditional rites, specifically the payment of the bride price.
Right, the ceremonial negotiation between families.
Exactly. And it's not just symbolic. It involves massive extended families, elaborate ceremonies, and significant financial exchange. It creates this fascinating dual system where you might have met your partner on Tinder, but to actually marry them, your uncles have to sit in a room with her uncles and negotiate over yams, cash, and textile. It anchors the modern nuclear couple back into the collective community. You aren't just marrying a person, you are merging two micronations.
That sense of community is almost entirely inverted when we cross the Atlantic to North America. Let's look at the United States. If Nigeria is about merging communities, the US feels like the epicenter of hyper-individualism. The dating market there seems to be driven by the paradox of choice.
The paradox of choice is the defining pathology of modern American romance. The US has effectively gamified dating. You have a massive menu of potential partners in your pocket, which creates this illusion of infinite supply. But psychologically, it's devastating. It creates serial monogamy and a culture of disposability.
Because there is always the lingering thought that a 5% better match is just one swipe away. And the expectations placed on marriage in the US are astronomically high. You aren't just looking for a stable partner anymore.
No, you are looking for a soulmate. The American cultural expectation is that your spouse must be your best friend, your financial equal, your intellectual peer, your co-parent, and your passionate lover for 50 years. It is an impossible job description. When people inevitably fail to meet all those metrics simultaneously, the relationship fractures. Hence, the high divorce rates, but also the high remarriage rates. Americans haven't given up on the institution. They are just relentlessly optimizing it.
Relentless optimization. That sounds exhausting. Let's head south for a contrast. Brazil, the most populated country in South America. The cultural stereotype is one of intense passion and carnival romance, but legally and socially, their approach to long-term commitment is quite pragmatic.
Very pragmatic. Brazil has a deeply romantic culture, but they place less emphasis on the rigid, institutional framework of a wedding. There's a massive dating culture centered around the concept of ficar, which basically means making out or casually hooking up without any immediate obligation. It's very present-focused.
But when things do get serious, they don't necessarily rush to the altar, do they?
No, they don't. A huge portion of Brazilian couples opt for what is called a união estável, a stable union. If you live together and present yourselves as a family, the state recognizes you as practically married, granting you rights without the need for a lavish ceremony or a religious seal of approval. It's a reflection of a society that values the lived reality of the connection over the bureaucratic stamp of it.
It's a very organic way to build a life. The legal system just quietly catches up to the romance. Now, let's pivot to Europe. Russia is the most populous country there, and it presents a completely different dynamic, heavily influenced by its demographics.
Russia is a profound case study in how macro-level history shapes intimate, micro-level behavior. Decades of historical trauma, going all the way back to World War II, combined with lower male life expectancy today, have created a stark demographic imbalance. There are significantly more women than men.
And basic economics dictates that scarcity changes market behaviour. How does that impact dating?
It makes the dating scene highly competitive for women and deeply reinforces traditional gender roles. Even in cosmopolitan places like Moscow, there is a strong expectation for men to be the chivalrous providers, and for women to be impeccably presented. Young urbanites are pushing back against this, trying to adopt more egalitarian European dating styles, but the undercurrent of traditionalism is incredibly strong. Marriage is often viewed as a necessary milestone to be achieved early, leading to a pattern of early marriages and, consequently, early divorces.
It's fascinating how the ghost of historical demographics is sitting right there at the candlelit dinner table. Let's move to Oceania, Australia, a culture famous for its laid-back egalitarian ethos. Does that translate to romance?
Absolutely. The Australian dating scene is characterized by a distinct lack of hierarchy. You know the concept of tall poppy syndrome in Australia? The idea that you shouldn't show off or act better than anyone else? That applies to dating. Flashy displays of wealth or overly aggressive courtship are generally frowned upon. Dating is casual meeting at pubs, group hangs, beach barbecues.
So the pressure cooker of the American soulmate search is turned down to a simmer.
Exactly. And similar to Brazil, the concept of a de facto relationship is deeply ingrained in Australia. Couples will live together, buy property, and raise children without ever feeling the societal pressure to formally marry. The commitment is there, but the institution is optional. It's a very horizontal, partnership-based approach to love.
All right, we've covered 6 continents, but an intelligence dossier isn't complete without the anomalies. We have a 7th continent, Antarctica. There is no indigenous population, no native country. But there are thousands of researchers and support staff living there in extreme isolation. What happens to the human algorithm when you strip away society and drop it into a frozen desert?
You get one of the most fascinating micro-societies on Earth. Take McMurdo Station during the long, dark winter. You have a small, confined group of people facing lethal cold outside. The psychological need for warmth, touch, and connection goes into overdrive. The dating scene is intense, accelerated, and highly incestuous because the pool is so small.
I remember reading about the famous Antarctic Tinder match. Two researchers, completely isolated in different camps, swiped right on each other. It's hilarious, but it also proves a point. Even at the end of the world, we are still broadcasting our signal, hoping someone catches it.
They even have a term for it down there: ice wives and ice husbands. These are intense, monogamous relationships that form rapidly to help people survive the psychological toll of the season. They provide emotional and physical anchoring. Most of these relationships melt away when the researchers return to the mainland, but while they are on the ice, they are as real and vital as any marriage.
That is the perfect encapsulation of this entire report. Whether you are navigating an algorithmic matchmaking spreadsheet in India, negotiating a bride price in Lagos, swiping through endless faces in the US, or clinging to an ice spouse in the frozen dark of Antarctica, the core directive is identical.
We are a species desperate not to be alone. The cultural packaging changes the laws, the apps, the ceremonies, the expectations, but the underlying code remains the same. We are all just trying to find someone to share the shelter with.
It really puts things in perspective. We spend so much time debating the politics of marriage, the decline of traditional values, or the toxicity of dating apps. But beneath all that noise, the human drive for connection is endlessly adaptable and incredibly resilient.
It is the one algorithm that never truly goes offline. It just keeps rewriting itself to fit the environment.
A beautiful thought to end on. The Intimacy Dossier remains open, constantly updating, as long as we are here.